Hello, aspirants. Welcome back. How are you all today? I hope your preparation is going well. So, today's point of discussion in this lecture is about the G20 summit, right? So, today here we will discuss about all the things that have been discussed in this G20 summit and all the things, all the concepts that you need to understand. I told you I will bring a separate video for this. So, here is the lecture. Okay. So now let's see what all were discussed. First of all, G20 summit, it took place where? In Rio de Janeiro in Brazil this year. Okay. So last year in 2023 it took place in India, and this year it is taking place in Brazil. So it has concluded and we will see what all was discussed and we will understand every point. Okay. So first of all, in this G20 summit, the G20 Social Summit, this has been introduced. Why this G20 Social Summit has been separately introduced? Because this summit, this social summit, will focus on the social issues. Okay, the social issues and cooperation among the member nations of G20. All right, and see what else was discussed. A roadmap, okay, a roadmap for the multilateral development banks have been introduced, which will help to reform, it will help to bring reform in the global financial governance. So what does this multilateral development banks do? What is the function of these banks? These banks, they provide the financial aid. Okay, financial aid means all the financial credits for the developing countries to help them develop. Okay, so this is the function of these multilateral development banks. Now in this G20 summit, a roadmap is a set of instruction. Okay, so it is a set of instruction, you can say. So it is a roadmap, a set of instruction have been introduced by which this multilateral development banks can be reformed so that they can improve the global financial scenario. All right. What else was discussed in this G20 summit? The African situation, this was also discussed. So this G20 summit, here the initiatives, some initiatives were proposed which will address the African challenges and it will reduce the external debt burdens of these African countries. So we all know that Africa is a very poor country and it has a lot of challenges. Now for developmental purposes, to fight this poverty, here these African nations, they need a lot of credit, they take a lot of loans, and these loans can keep on increasing and they face these debt burdens also. So to address these issues, to reduce these debt burdens, these initiatives have been discussed and certain initiatives have been taken. Okay. The next point of discussion in G20 summit was about the women's empowerment. Now this is also important point of discussion globally, women empowerment. So women's empowerment working group, this was introduced to promote the gender equality and the women's rights. Another very, very important thing that occurred in this G20 summit, you have to remember this, is that another sustainable development goal, the SDG 18, this has been added. So a new sustainable development goal focusing on the ethnic and racial equality, this has been added in the G20 summit. So far we had 17 SDG goals, right? The 17 sustainable development goals. Now these 17 goals, it is important to remember, whichever is in news, often these kind of questions are asked in your MCQs. So you have to remember this SDG 17 SDGs that we had. Now a 18th sustainable development goal has been introduced, which will focus on what? On the ethnic and racial equality. All right. Now the next point, what else was discussed? A global alliance. Okay, a global alliance against hunger and poverty have been launched by Brazil. So this was also the point of discussion in G20 summit. Now in details we will also discuss this global alliance against this hunger and poverty that Brazil have introduced. Okay, this they have introduced and this was a point of discussion in G20. So this we will discuss in details. Just give me 2 minutes, I will cover these points and then we can come back to this particular alliance. Okay. What else happened in G20? Support for the COP30. So this COP30, the Conference of Parties, the full form of COP30 is Conference of Parties, right? This is scheduled to be held again in Brazil, in Belém, in Brazil in 2025. So regarding this, since this is scheduled to be held in 2025, regarding this, support was also endorsed. Next, a new quantified collective objective for climate financing. This has been introduced to enhance mechanisms for what? To finance the climate related initiatives. So this new quantified collective objective for climate financing, this NCQG, this is basically a target. Okay, some targets have been set regarding the climate financing, and to enhance climate financing, this has been introduced so that we can take care of all the climate challenges that is taking place. All the countries, they are doing some initiatives or the other to reduce the effect of that we have on climate change. So for this NCQG, this was introduced. Now let's talk a little bit about this Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty that was introduced by Brazil in the G20 summit. What all it says, what is it related to, everything we will discuss. So the Brazilian president Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva launched this Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty in the G20 summit, which was held in Rio de Janeiro. So this name you have to remember. The name of the Brazilian president, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. This you have to remember. Just remember Lula da Silva. This will help you identify it from the MCQs. Now this alliance, what is the purpose? Its purpose is to eradicate hunger and poverty globally by the year 2030. So the targeted year for this alliance to eradicate hunger and poverty is 2030. So you have to remember the targeted year is 2030. Now total 82 nations, they have, they are the founding members, and in this 82 nations, Brazil, India, China, USA and European countries, they were the founding members. So you have to remember that India is also a founding member. So India is also a founding member of G20, the group of 20, and it is also the founding member of this alliance. Okay, so 82 nations together, 82 nations, they were the founding members of this alliance. It includes some European countries as well, includes China and USA, and it includes Brazil and India. Okay, the progress of this particular alliance, this will be monitored through regular summits and a high level champions council. So a high level champions council have been formed, which will regulate, which will monitor all the progresses that takes place under this alliance. Okay, so regular summits will also be held to monitor the progress. Now the UN Food and Agricultural Organization FAO, they will host a dedicated technical body to provide strategic support for this alliance, since it is to eliminate what? To eliminate hunger and poverty. So in eliminating hunger, UN Food and Agricultural Organization, they play an important role. So they will provide a technical body to provide the strategic support this alliance needs. Okay, now just a quick question, where is the headquarters of FAO? This is also an important international organization. So the headquarters of FAO is where? It is in Rome, right? Okay, so now let's come back to the G20 summit that we were discussing. Now let's talk about the climate change information. Now Brazil, UN, that is the United Nations, and UNESCO, they have launched a global initiative on climate change information. So this is another important thing that took place in the G20 summit, that Brazil, the United Nations and UNESCO, they have together launched this global initiative on climate change information. Why has this been launched? It will focus on combating disinformation regarding climate change, and so that proper climate action can be taken based on the accurate information. I will just let you know one little thing over here, that there are certain sections of countries, certain pockets, in fact USA as well, there are certain sections of people who believe that climate change is a myth. Do you know this? So they think that it is a myth, climate change is not taking place, and so on. So during the previous Trump administration, the USA, they withdrew from some of the climate initiatives, right? There are a lot of climate change related treaties and organizations which do some treaties. So from these, some of these treaties and from some of these promises that USA previously made during the last Trump administration, USA withdrew from some of these treaties. Do you know this? So there is a section of people who believe in this disinformation. So to fight this disinformation, to have accurate information about climate issues, this particular proposal, this particular initiative have been taken. So this aims to enhance the reliability of climate research, so that proper climate research can be done and there can be proper adequate information to make decisions regarding the climate financing and the climate policies. Okay, now initially a fund of 10 to 15 million dollar will be raised over the next 36 months, which will be managed by the UNESCO. So UNESCO will manage this fund that will be raised for this purpose. Now, South Africa has become the first African nation to lead the G20 summit. So, the next G20 summit, which will take place in 2025, will take place in South Africa. So, Brazil, they have officially transferred their G20 presidency to South Africa. And with this, South Africa has become the first African nation to lead the G20, which is a historic milestone. So, we all know that how African countries, they have been treated historically, what the colonial past of the African countries have been, but now South Africa has become the first African nation that will take the presidency of G20. Now let's talk about some of the static GK points about the G20 you need to know. The full form of G20 is the Group of 20, and India was a founding member, remember this. Now G20, it was founded in 1999, okay? Why was this founded? It was established in response to the financial crisis of the late 1990s, which impacted mainly East Asia and Southeast Asia. So you might have read this in economy that during the late 1990s there was a financial crisis and prices rose in India as well. India was very well impacted by this financial crisis, and that is why we had to later on take up the policy of liberalization, right? So during this time, due to this financial crisis, it was decided that so a group of countries will be founded with the aim to secure this global financial stability, so that if there is this kind of financial crisis, individual countries are not much impacted. So with this aim to secure a global financial stability by involving middle income countries, because if all the power they lie with all the high income countries like USA, then the problem is that more and more global financial instability can take place, this kind of financial crisis can take place. So to combat that, G20 have included middle income countries as well. It aims to get a financial stability globally, okay? Now the composition of G20, the G20 consists of 19 countries along with the European Union and the African Union. So together now it has 21 countries, but initially it was the 19 countries along with the European Union. So that made the G20. And the African Union, they were accepted as a full-time member of the G20 in the G20 summit of 2023. This was also in news last year. So in 2023, when India had the presidency, so in this G20 summit, the African Union, this again has a lot of countries within this African Union. Like European Union, they also have a lot of European countries within this union, right? So the African Union, they joined in 2023. So they were accepted as a full-time member since 2023. And India's role, India hosted the G20 Leaders Summit in 2023, right? So that is all the things that we needed to discuss about G20. This you remember, this will be enough for your exam. Now we have not provided a separate PDF for this. This is present in your daily current affairs of 21st of November itself. So in there you will get this, to download this, join the Telegram channel Focus Prep Current Affairs. The link is given in the comment section. Go to the comments, join, click on the link and join this Telegram channel to download all the PDFs, all the weekly, daily and the MCQ PDFs. Okay, that is all for today. Thank you everyone.